Okay, so thanks very much, Peter, for that. Another great rally, I'm sure, going to come for us for next year. So tonight is our great debate, which is all about pros of cons. We're going to hear about paper charts and electronic, and we will have a motion. We will have a vote at the end of the presentations and a little bit of a debate from everybody on the floor. We can do it as a paper ballot. I have got some ballot papers, so or we can do it as a show of hands. It might be a bit fun to do it as a ballot, I thought, and I have got them here. So anyway, so we've got 4 people this evening to present to you, 2 for each side of the argument, and we will have the motion is going to be to bin your paper charts, end of, and it will be for or against. So without further ado, let's hear from our first person this evening, none other than our great Tony Johns, who's going to say a few words and a little bit of graphics for us, speaking about really the case for paper charts. So, Tony, let's hear from you.
I didn't know I was going to be numbered.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, well, sort of. Now, if I may be permitted to start.
And the clock has started, sorry, Tony.
I've been sailing 73 years or a little more. When I saw his striking, I don't mean as a child that high, I mean helming and whatever. And obviously brought up on the oldie charts, black and white, fathoms, lighthouses, lightships, etc. Then in came metric charts. Doug will probably know when, but it's relatively recently, last 20, 25 years.
I suspect some out in the Caribbean are still in fathoms and feet.
Yes, and some of the islands aren't in the right place in the Pacific, are they? Depths in meters, and it was delayed until after the first satellite system, the transit as it's formally known, where you've got a fix every hour and a half, and roughly, and about 100-yard accuracy, give or take, but something like that. The charts originally, the round here, around the coast, were OSGB 36 reference. They then went over to WGS 84, World Geodetic System, and I guess most charts in these days of satellite navigation, because the satellites, certainly GPS runs on WGS 84. And as a matter of interest, at the time of the earlier system, if you went from Dover to Cornwall, you would develop on the OSGB 36 charts, you would develop something like 200 yards error. I know it's not a lot, and if you're in the middle of the channel, it probably doesn't matter. But the point I'd like to make is boats are man-made from end to end, and the only thing that cannot go wrong are paper charts. They can't go wrong. They can go out of date, of course, that's down to the user, but they can't go wrong. Whereas anything electrical or electronic, or nuts and bolts and bilge keels and or everything to do with a boat can fail. So I'd just like to make that point that charts, paper charts can't go wrong. GPS, previously the transit, then we've got GLONASS, we've got Galileo, not fully done yet, and various other GPS-like. They're technically different, but they serve the same purpose. I've got a matchbox-sized one in my case. I carry my iPad in, and it's GPS and the GLONASS receivers. So I think it takes the best geometry at any instant in time, talks with Bluetooth to my iPad, and there we go. And it has got us out of problems, hasn't it, Peter? going up Chichester Harbour, if you remember, where you can run aground with the greatest of ease. I'd then like to mention mobile phones. I think they're far too small. Unless you have one of the bigger ones, I suppose it's getting better. Even iPads and equivalents are a bit small. You can't write on them, but nevertheless, you can see with GPS or another system where you actually are on a maritime chart. So that's the plus. Did you know that mobile phones, fact now, have been known on powerboats, some of these sort of sunseeker things, 30 or 40 knots, on a phone on a standby, in case you get a phone call, which is an obsession, it's a mental disease. But they have been turned, the steering compass, through roughly 90 degrees. And you do that at 30, 40 knots, that's a bit iffy, isn't it?
They wreck compasses if you keep the mobile phone close to your compass.
And or an autopilot heading sensor, which a crew member may not know where it's kept. Could be all sorts of places. So, in my opinion, you've got to have paper charts, even if it's only a limited number. And I've always thought, since we had all this electronics, that you either navigate traditionally and the GPS pats you on the back, give or take, or conversely, you navigate with GPS, do it the other way around, and have enough experience to know that the GPS is lying for some invisible reason. You don't mean faulty, but you get multiple reflections off. If you're close to land, off buildings, you might get it off a passing ship, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, now, when this all started, thanks to you, about, what, 6 months ago, something like that, first thing I did was ring up MCA and have a chat, the Coast Guard Agency. I also contacted the Hydrographic Office at Taunton, and I'd like to read you a very short piece which came from Taunton, from the Hydrographic Office. It says, "Thank you for your email regarding paper charts. Paper charts are still used amongst a variety of customers, including commercial vessels, in order to meet their own flag state requirements." That's IMO. It used to be IMCO, but it's been IMO for years. Although the number of customers using ENCs, which I presume is electronic navigation charts, has risen greatly over the past few years, yes. If you or a cruising club member were interested in our product range, both paper and digital, and how they comply with SOLAS regulations, we have an extensive website with further details. I'm sure you can appreciate we're not able to comment on the products that the Royal Navy use or have on board. So I thought they're still selling paper charts, both to commercial shipping and to the leisure users. And the only other thing really, I talked last night to Navionics. I'm in there, I get free charts. But that's another story. But they reckon Navionics as a company, and probably one of the best known, certainly for use in leisure industry, recommend that people carry paper charts. Despite the fact they want to sell tons of their electronic ones, and they do, and the electronic ones and chart plotters, of course, and all the rest of it, they still recommend that you carry, I presume, not a complete portfolio, but a sufficient number to get you out the mire if suddenly you've got no power, or something shows up huge errors and that sort of thing. And there is no way I haven't done anything like the mileage most of you have done. I've only done one real long trip, and that was Grimsby to Brest, across the Bay of Biscay, around Lisbon and Portugal, the Balearics, and into Cannes at the other end. 5,000 gallons of diesel we got through, powerboat, 20 knots, flat out, gin palace. But there we go, that's another story. but there's no way I'd go to sea without at least some paper charts that would get me out of trouble if electrics failed. And I'd like to show you, if I may. You may think it's funny, but I'm going to show you something, if I can find it on here.
So I'll just let you know, Tony.
I've finished.
I know you have. I know. Just to be fair to everybody, we're trying to. 15 minutes will be the cut-off for everybody. So
Right.
you've got 6 minutes. If you want to use those 6 minutes, please do.
You can take up some of my time if you want.
Now I thought you'd like to see these. These, can you see it over there? I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'll get out the way or kneel down, then you'll be able to see it. Now these,
It's not on the screen.
there we are. I've got two sources of information. If you run it. Oh God, it's getting up, it doesn't.
Not everybody thinking of saying prayers, Tony, with
Oh, you're down there, Tony.
Just have a look at these. Now, I've put the writing on these, but these, if you look there, you won't see it from that distance. That says neutral, and that says live. And that wire is half
Hanging out. Yeah.
is half hanging out.
Yeah.
This was on the new boat. Yes, that is known fact. So I thought you should see that as a starter. Pole saw cable locator. What about that?
He's just cut a hole.
That's if you don't use a qualified technician with a bit of grace over it. These are all fact. Now that's a bit of a shambles, isn't it? And I've seen worse than that.
So have I.
That looks like what it's like behind my television.
Yes.
I've seen a 57-foot Beneteau boat which purported to comply with all sorts of regulations and all the rest on electrics. It looked a bit like that. Worse than that, when a picture I was given, I was asked to be a court thingy, but it never came to the courts. What about that?
That's bad.
So that's not very clever, is it?
It may have been a mess.
A live cable with just the end bent over with a bit of plastic around it. That it says airborne floating switch. It's not fastened to anything. So that's not very clever, is it? What about that one? Which is overheated. There's a bit of, you can see just a little bit of corrosion down there, a bit of verdigris, but it's obviously.
Well, be careful with that, you get a spark off there and it set fire to your paper.
Yeah,
I don't know what the chance to is down in the engine room. No cable identifications and an equally shambolic mess. No IDs at all.
Good colour coding there.
Now what about that for connecting an on-off switch?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It
It's off when you push it, it's on when you pull it.
Melted power supply unit balanced on top of the fuel tank.
Oh my God.
And you can see the melting already occurred.
Not this petrol.
How about that for fixing
Oh my God.
Yeah, I finished.
It may be watertight, more or less.
Do you reckon?
Well, what it was holding down, I don't know. No fusing or breakers, and you can see what state that wiring is in. Judging by the remains of the colour, it's mains. Looking at the cable,
Yeah.
can't even make this work. There we are.
That,
It
yeah.
looks like a brown, and that looks like an earth wire, the
Yeah.
yellow bit of an earth wire, and that is the
It's
neutral
quite a thick
really.
cable.
And incidentally, it looks, but I may be quite wrong, like a bit of domestic
Which is
cabling.
probably
And one never uses that
anything.
because
It's not.
vibration can cause the cables to break.
Yeah.
There's another wire that's having been built. and it's a sort of single strand. Never ever have single strands on boats for the same reason. They work loose and they can also break and come loose due to vibration. That's all I wanted you to see.
So Tony, so in summary, you think we should be keeping paper charts on boats?
I wouldn't go see otherwise.
Not on boats with bad wiring.
Yeah.
You don't know what you take a charter boat out. You don't know what the wiring's like.
Anybody want to chip back at Tony on any points, or at this point before we move on to the next person? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I
say
kind
something?
of more or less agree with everything Tony said. Actually.
I think we've got to understand what we're arguing.
More or less.
Well, listen to what John's got to say to start with.
I'd like Tony to come and check the wiring on my boat, quick.
No, I wouldn't have let him check mine.
We are, we're arguing about whether to bin your paper charts, end off. And clearly from what Tony's saying, you wouldn't get on a boat and go off on any sort of voyage without having access to at least one paper chart.
I know when I used to go down the Severn estuary from Sharpness with 10 knots under me, or coming back conversely, and transits on the Welsh and English sides. So I was doing probably 15 knots over the ground, and we didn't have, just before the first satellite system appeared, and I wouldn't have liked to. I mean, I had to have charts. There was no argument about it in those days, but by God, it would be frightening not to.
Yeah.
So you're going at 15 knots.
Over the ground,
How often were you plotting?
it wasn't a question. I didn't plot at all, but I only did it when I knew the visibility was good, and that you have so many transits on that little patch, up to, from Sharpness down to Bristol, provided you can see them. Some of them you have to look over the
So
transit.
you need your electronic chart, GPS, because otherwise you're in stuck.
You have to be sure, confident that the GPS was not even 100 yards of inaccuracy. I mean, normally we know it's very, very accurate.
We're running out of time.
Yeah. Right. Well.
When do you want comments?
Yeah, if you want to say
Well,
something
the
now,
idea was
so
we'd have
John, give me the
comments.
opportunity
No,
for a quick
Harry,
word.
Harry,
Harry,
Three
I think
speakers,
we
and
should
then I
have
want to move on.
Harry, I think we should have comments at the end.
Yeah.
Well, at the end as well, but I'm just giving an opportunity. I just want to give a quick opportunity for somebody if they want to come in, and I'll stop them. And if
There's one thing, just because it's relevant to both sides, I think, is that there was some discussion that I was reading about is how many new water surveys have been done recently, i.e., of underneath the water stuff.
Well,
And there aren't that many have been done recently all over the world. There's some, but they're not that up to date. And therefore, is electronic navigation relying on old surveys?
well, I'm not sure.
I think there's always room for doubt.
Yes, exactly.
There's
Yeah.
always room for doubt.
That
Because
seemed an
they
interesting point.
publish
Right, John, let's have you up then, John. So this evening's debate, John was very much instrumental in this this point and discussion. So we can thank John for this idea for tonight, ably supported by Peter. So, but it's great to see you this evening, John. Really great to see you. But let's see what you've got to say, John, on the case for.
Before he starts, I'd
Electronic.
like to say, if it hadn't been for GPS, we wouldn't have got here.
Right. Right, navigation on boats. Charts. Before longitude became possible to calculate, latitude navigation was done for hundreds of years. And it's very simple, as we're told on a few occasions here. Polaris or North Star, if you keep that the same height from the horizon to the North Star, you'll stay on the same line of latitude. So that's how the Vikings went round on 70 latitude and found America hundreds of years before Columbus did. So you get a stick and an arm, and notch the stick, top of it where Polaris is, and the bottom of it on the horizon. And as long as you keep that length of stick and length of arm there, you'll stay on the same latitude. And people navigate it, and then to get back home again, you just turn around, keep it on the same latitude, and you get home again. And people navigated like that for scores of years. The next, the first big advance then, was the ability to calculate longitude, which meant you could then have satellite, celestial navigation gear and charts. And celestial navigation obviously was a lot more accurate because you've got crosshairs rather than just one line. But it took a lot longer to calculate your position using celestial navigation than it did just with your stick. And because there was a lot more calculations, it was a lot easier to make a mistake with celestial navigation than just picking up your stick. During the day, at noon, when the sun's at its highest, you could use the stick method, the same as at night you can use Polaris. The trouble with using the stick method during the day is obviously looking at directly at the sun, damage people's eyes, so you get a lot of sailors with a patch over their arm.
Is that why you wear glasses, John?
Who said that?
I've never sailed with John when he's had the sun with the sextant.
So,
Yeah, he needs a carrot on his shoulder, doesn't he? Go back to the Vikings days.
and to do so then you aim, if you're just doing long latitude navigation, you aim to the north or you aim off for where you're going to go to, so you know whether to turn north or south when you get there. You don't aim directly where you're going to. So you're going to be a couple of weeks going across the Atlantic. You're going to have a couple of weeks extra, so you know which way to go. So the accuracy of this method is determined by the length of the stick and the length of your arm. So if you pick up the wrong stick or use a shorter arm like somebody else, then you could be on the wrong latitude and could hit rocks and all sorts. But all navigators trusted their tried and tested methods. They've been using this stick for 30 years and they've gone from Norway to America and back again several times. Why change? It works. And it's very difficult to make a mistake. There's nothing more accurate and simple than a stick.
Unless you want to go south.
If you've been doing it for the last 30, 40 years, you can get to where you want to go, then home. It's very difficult. It's very, there's no reason to change. Celestial navigation made things more accurate, a lot slower, and easy to make mistakes. So it's much quicker to grab your stick and hold it, same as you've been doing for the last 30 or 40 years, successfully finding your way home. Or constantly looking over the top of the stick at the sun. Now, we come to a particularly dangerous method of navigating, looking directly at the sun around local noon through the lens of a sextant. As I said before, the disciplined navigator only has to look at the sun through a lens and a sextant for a split second, they're permanently blinded in that eye. Now, when I was showing that to a friend of mine who started sailing the same day as I did, he didn't know that was the case. The John Garner last week, he said, it doesn't damage your eyelid. I said, it does. He said, I'll never know. So, the danger there is, John's not done any navigational training. The danger there is, but he's keen to learn. Every time on a boat, he wants to learn how to do things. And the danger there is, if he sees us doing celestial navigation, and we pick up the sextant, put our lenses over, filters over, and do our readings. He didn't see you put the filters over, and he was just standing there, picked it up, wanted to have a go, looked there, blind in one eye. So, when we move on from using a sextant, it's important that the sextant is off the boat so that the keen non-navigator doesn't pick it up and do what he's seen happen hundreds of times before, pick it up and look through it, him not knowing that there's filters on it to protect your eye. So once again, going from the stick to celestial navigation, going from celestial navigation to charts, it's important that the old method is taken off the boat altogether.
Excuse me.
Sorry. Sorry, John.
So we see a pattern emerging with each new method of navigation. It's important to get rid of the old method. Take it off the boat completely. So the next method is the charts that we're talking about. People using charts.
To make sure you are not over-reliant upon your GPS set and that you have sufficient skills and information, charts, almanacs and pilot books to navigate yourself to safety without it should it fail. And that's the SOLAS regulation for leisure craft. I've been teaching RYA shore-based classes for longer than I care to remember. 10 years at Northampton College and 10 years privately. And at one stage the RYA were very concerned that people were going to be taught the history of navigation. I don't know how many people here could still do dead reckoning and estimated position on paper charts.
Yep.
Do the marks under there, section.
Yeah.
I've still got my stick.
How long's your stick and how long's your arm? You're quite harmless, really, John. They were in danger of people being people like me teaching the history of navigation. And that's an element of truth in that. But I'm a great believer in electronic navigation. I really am, and I used it on my boat all the time. However, I think that when you are planning a passage, it's very good to have a paper chart spread out in front of you so that you can actually see where we're going to go next. And if I could just refer to what it was like out in the Baltic, you've got lots and lots, I don't know if you can see these islands here. Which route are you going to take through those islands? And so, you know, I was doing my passage planning, if you like, or the route that I was going to take using a paper chart. And I would get well, not on this particular chart, but I would do a broad line on the paper chart where I was going to go. And therefore, I think paper charts are absolutely essential on a boat. They really are essential. And to say get rid of them, bin them, is totally and absolutely wrong. And I could be very rude to you, John, but I won't. I was going to use a word beginning with B, but it's got 2 L's in it.
Okay, don't bin them, just put them by your stick.
Most chart plotters, I think, some chart plotters can be very dangerous, because how many boats have people sailed on when the chart plotter has been stuck in front of the helmsman? There he is steering, and there's the chart plotter. How many boats have you been on when you've seen that? And I think that is about the worst possible place you can put the chart plotter, because the only person who can see that chart plotter is the helmsman. I think it's all wrong. And therefore,
you can get a repeater in the nav station.
Well, you may be able to, but you know, I've been on boats when the helmsman said this is where we steer, because he's got it there, and you can't see the thing. you may be able to get a repeater, but sometimes you don't get repeaters, because on a charter boat, what you get is what you've got, isn't it? Yeah. So I think that with chart plotters and GPS navigation, yes, you've got to have that chart plotter in the right place.
Everybody's got their own iPhone, so they're all following it anyway.
Going in different directions. So there's a couple of instances, the danger of electronic navigation. There's the Flinders Islet incident, which happened in 2010, when the cruising yacht of Australia was organising a Category 2 race around part of Australia. And one of the boats actually hit a reef outside off the Flinders Island. And the incident was almost an exact replica of the Cork Clipper. I don't know if that was you then.
That wasn't on
your
my
race, was
it?
Yeah. When somebody had put a waypoint in, GPS waypoint, electronic navigation, far, far too close to the reef. So, you've got to be so careful with GPS of how you do it. And I know people who have put waypoints in are very close, and I think, no, you should always, if you're going to put a waypoint in to steer to or something like that, a clearance, it should be about half a mile off. You don't have to go to it necessarily. But you've got to look at your paper chart and have that paper chart on board. So your passage planning should be done definitely with a paper chart. You don't need to have so many paper charts on board if you're using a chart plotter, but you've still got to have the paper charts on board. Don't bin them. It is irresponsible to bin, that's the word we're talking about, to bin your paper charts. It's like in a sextant, how do you navigate going across the Atlantic Ocean if you haven't got your sextant with you and your GPS goes down? The Americans could turn it off, couldn't they?
I thought you got your stick out.
Russians. John could.
That's what beating the crew over the head with.
You get your stick out.
Yes. Which one? So, now I'm a great believer in having paper charts on board. You do not need to have so many paper charts. That's fact. But you've got to have paper charts on board. You really have. And I think that people who are... You talked about people playing games with them and things like that, and that's what they're used to, this speedy navigation. Yeah. Because the best use of a chart plotter and a GPS on board is to show you where you are. Now when I'm doing navigation across the channel, working out a course to steer, I always used to do it on a paper chart and work out the actual course to steer, allowing for time. Do it as a paper-based system. But where I am, looking on the GPS, and occasionally if I felt like a bit of fun, I'd do the dead reckoning and speaking positions. So do not bin paper charts, keep them. It's irresponsible to bin paper charts. That's the motion, isn't it? Should we bin paper charts?
That is the motion.
No, definitely not.
So how do you stop somebody using both systems? That's the bit I was saying, when you're using both the paper charts and electronic systems. The speed of electronics and people who want to use paper charts.
The skipper on board the boat or the navigator on the boat is the one who's doing the navigation. So he's the one who's doing the navigation.
Without doubt.
Yeah.
Without the keen amateur that
Well, it's up to the skipper and the navigator to make sure that the keen navigator isn't doing daft things, upsetting things.
Exactly. What you're saying is it's down to competence, and incompetence will always create problems.
Yes.
So it's like putting in a waypoint that's too close to the reef.
Yes.
You can plot a waypoint too close to the reef in the paper chart. You can have an error in your navigation and be on the reef thinking you're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So
That's what happened in the Flinders.
if we got errors in judgment, whether you've got paper charts or electronic charts, doesn't really make a lot of difference. Well, actually, I would say you'd be better off with electronic, be less likely to make an error. But you've got to take human error out of the equation, because
You can't take human error out of
Well,
the equation.
if they haven't got
you're more
chart-
likely to make a mistake. Well, I'll get to it in my presentation. I don't want to steal your
Are you
thought.
going to talk a load of rubbish as well then, Peter?
Just following up, despite the Cork boat incident, I spoke to the sailing director a few months ago with this Clipper, and his view was exactly yours. He said he would never set sail Scotland would not allow any of the clipper boats out of harbour without a set of charts.
No, quite. Yeah. Well, called clipper boat. I think it's in the Indian Ocean. They hit a reef.
Yeah.
Indian Ocean because they've got the, you know, you could say that
They did something else.
this is
well on that
another
map.
issue. But one of the big problems with a chart plotter is people tend to keep it on the same scale. You can't do that. You've got to keep altering the scale of the chart plotter because the closer in you get, the more you're going to see on that.
So this reef that got hit, were there paper charts on that boat?
There would have been, yeah. But
There would have been.
There you go.
I was not.
Navigator.
But he did something else stupid as well on that
If you've
map,
got
so-
stupid people navigating, you're
Doug, thank you very much for coming forward to speak to the case of keep paper charts and not
Doug, I
putting
would
in
just
your
mention
bin.
that before, when waypoints came in for the yachtsmen, with SatNav, before that, in the trade, as I was for all those years, we had radar-assisted collisions, because people put waypoints on their radar actually on the reef.
Oh,
yeah. Can you get some? Okay, so we're going to have Peter talk in a few moments' time. He's going to be also supporting Binning the Charts. And then we'll got opportunities for a bit more debate amongst everybody. People want to grab a drink after Peter's piece, then we can do that. My glass is empty.
Was that a hint?
We're certainly not going to bin the bar.
Sorry,
Get arrested in the back row.
Having said all that, this guy's good because he never comes on deck to you, he's always
So 10 of us on that boat, 10 independent power supplies, independent traffic.
What worries me is the 10 different navigators.
10 separate,
Instead of called iPhones.
10 separate courses of steps.
We know it's all right, we should be down below cooking, wouldn't you, John?
Yes.
Down below cooking, so
He's got the name of that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just climbing the bar.
Okay, I could stop in the middle and we can have a drink if you want.
No, I'll tell them to come back in about 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you, so pay attention everybody.
My fault.
Are you the independent?
I'm the independent. Yes. I don't have an axe to grind. I don't have a pot to piss in either. Oh, I think I've got off the text here. Okay.
Bear with me a second.
I told you we should have used paper slides.
Do you want to borrow my paper chart to put on there?
There we go. Do we have to put some of the lights out, maybe?
No, it'll come.
Will it?
It's just warming up, is it?
Yeah.
It's warming up.
Is it?
It was,
Okay.
We could see it all fine before.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I just press. Okay. So, why would you want to keep your charts? Basically, there are two philosophies here. One is you're not you're not comfortable using electronic ones, and that's understandable. Some of us who've got grey hair and some of us who haven't got grey hair don't want. And the other thing is, there's a sort of a fear factor. So I need a paper chart just in case something goes wrong. But what's going to go wrong? Is the electronic one going to fail? How does it fail? Or is the boat's electrics going to blow up and suddenly we don't have any electrics on the boat? So is that the issue? So just bear with me for a moment. Can any of you spot the odd one out?
Your boat.
We've got state-of-the-art Airbus
Yes.
320 Neo, we've got a Eurofighter Typhoon, we've got the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and we've got Stroller, which is the best boat in the world. Anybody down? And she's for sale at the moment. Okay,
It's got to be Endeavour.
It is.
wrong.
Because it's the only one that can escape gravity.
Wrong.
Got sails.
Okay, I'll put you out of your agony. Stroller is the odd one out.
Yeah.
But for what reason?
It's a boat.
These are all fly-by-wire. This is designed that it's inherently Dick, I bet you know this, Dick. It's inherently unstable, and you can't fly it if you don't have a computer.
Same with that.
So if the computer system packs up on these things, everybody's gonna die.
There's only one part of it.
If the computer system packs up on this, nobody's going to die. So that's why Stroller's the odd one out. How many of you flew in an airplane in the last 12 months?
Yeah.
And these are things that fall out of the sky. Usually it's pilot error, but they're also falling out of the sky because the instruments fail. So it doesn't bother you to fly in a plane where instrument failure will kill you. But you're worried about instrument failure on a boat, so you carry a paper chart to stop you having any good luck.
More people are killed on the motorway than in aircraft.
And fewer people get killed on sailing boats with no paper charts than on the motorway. So, okay. So if you want to bin your chart, which we do, if you don't want to bin your chart, problem is the electronic chart will fail. How many of you who use electronic charts have actually experienced a failure of the electronic chart?
All the time.
And what was the cause of the failure?
Can't see the chart.
I was going to tell you this little story because you know that sailing with Dick is fun. Well, we were sailing up the East Coast.
No, sailing with Dick is dangerous. It's
No,
not
it's fun. It's fun.
You can't buy life insurance if you don't have sailing with Dick.
Is it? So we were sailing up the East Coast,
She's
which
still
is
alive.
yeah, exactly. As you know, is challenging. But Dick has one sensible thing about him. Anyway, so I'll tell you what it is in a minute. So we were sailing up the East Coast, and the coastline was sort of roughly on the paper chart or on any chart was roughly sort of like that, and we were coming around here. But just this square disappeared. It told us exactly where our boat was, but all the lines, all the chart underneath our boat had completely disappeared. And guess what?
Operator
Suddenly,
you hadn't bought the chart for that piece.
Very good on the chart on the East Coast.
What?
On the chart on the East
No,
Coast.
but fortunately, two things were very fortunate. One, Dick has a lifting keel.
Very good exercise.
So we lifted the keel and we floated off. Second thing was we had a paper chart on board, so which we then consulted to see where exactly we were. We were on the Onion Bank. And actually, the electronic chart it failed, wasn't it?
How did you find out you were on the Onion Bank?
When we looked at the paper chart.
How did you know where you were?
Because we were looking at the land.
So you had good visibility then?
Yes.
Mary, I'm going to tell you about my other good points one of these days.
You got lots of them, Dick.
So usually we have a lot of backup for the electronic charts. I agree that they can. You can get interference. They're becoming more and more reliable. A lot of phones actually get their signal not from satellites but from phone towers. So it's a different system. But I'm not prepared to accept that the failure of the electronic chart is a justification for having a paper chart on board because you've got backup on the electronic one. Okay. So what else can go wrong? The boat electrics can fail.
It doesn't make any
After the answer to the last question, I'm a bit hesitant to ask, but how many people have had a total catastrophic instrument and electrical failure on their boat?
Really?
We just ran out of battery.
Ah, incompetence again.
Well, it wasn't a comment, it wasn't my vote. But, I mean,
Why did the battery run down?
Because the lady insisted we kept the fridge on.
Ah.
However,
You just switch your own phone.
no, we just switched the engine on. After
Yeah.
the panic died down, we switched the engine on.
Yeah. So then you're okay.
Okay, so that was one failure. Another failure was when the power lead dropped out of the bottom.
Okay.
And that was just very bad conditions.
Yeah, but you'd have normally in most situations you get backup on. People have phones. People have a couple of extra plotters, and
Yes,
you don't go to sea without preparing properly.
Two people have to do the gallons, which are handheld GPS.
Yeah.
Both of which have dead batteries in. So half an hour later, we raided every torch on the boat.
Yeah. But if all the batteries go down, you don't have a depth, you don't have a log.
No.
If you've got bad visibility, you're in serious trouble because you can't follow a contour. You're not going to know where you are. If you have GPS, at least you'll know where you are in bad days. If the batteries go down and you've got a handheld one that will survive a bit. But again, it's a little bit like Tony's argument about bad wiring. I'm not quite prepared to accept that, because if you've got an incompetent crew or an incompetent navigator, or you've got a boat that's built badly with terrible wiring in it, the boat could well go on fire. Or you could equally well have a badly maintained engine. The engine goes down when you need it most. So a paper chart's not going to save you if your boat's burning because the electrics are in bad shape. So I think that's a sort of a bit of a non sequitur argument. I suppose my argument is really, we worry about things going wrong, and of course it's normal that we're reluctant to embrace new technology, but there have been lots of cases of, do we still have people that don't want a toilet in the house? Because in the good old days, when people were offered new houses with inside loos, they thought, that's very dirty, moving a toilet inside the house. Why would you want to do that? Or we moved from writing things, carving them in stone, to putting it on paper. Good God, who'd want to do that? Because paper can burn, or it can get wet and be destroyed. At least a stone tablet's still going to be there, after the storm. Lots of cases of that. So sometimes it's difficult to embrace technology. So I thought I'd just list the benefits of paper charts and the benefits of electronic. And funnily enough, not very many benefits from paper charts. It's something to scribble on. We all like to scribble on stuff, and it gives you a nice warm feeling. Electronic charts have all these wonderful benefits, automatically updated. You'll always have the right chart. I remember for the life of me I can't remember his name, but we had a great talk from somebody who'd sailed around the world a couple of times in NOSCA one evening a few years ago, and he said he had 2 chart plotters on board. He never had to use the backup chart plotter. He wouldn't have been able to go where he wanted to go if he'd been dependent on paper charts, because he wouldn't have been able to carry enough paper charts for everywhere. And quite often you go somewhere and you decide, oh, this is a nice part of the world, I'd like to explore a bit more. And you cannot carry the charts for the whole world. So, but he did on his electronic charts. You get instantaneous position fixes, instantaneous speed over the ground, course over the ground. There was a case, it was in 2002, HMS Nottingham ran aground offshore Australia because they were using paper charts. And after that, the Navy...
They weren't using the charts, that was the problem.
The navigation was out, they
screwed up.
They screwed up, yes, but it was poor navigation, and they didn't know quickly enough where they were. So it was after that the Navy said every vessel
in the Navy must have an electronic system that they call WECDIS, which is a Warship Electronic Chart Display and Info System. Well, the navigator on that boat may have had a nice warm feeling because he had his paper charts, but it was probably the sort of warm feeling you get when you wet yourself, and it's probably a warm feeling in your groin, but suddenly, sorry, it's getting very, it may even get more lavatorial as we go on, but you soon realise that that warm feeling wasn't the warm feeling you thought it was. You talked about passage planning. It's easy to, you've got packages for less than 100 quid that will let you take into account tidal streams, tidal depths. It'll even work out for you when's the best time to leave to get to where you want to go. And it's done by pushing a button. You've got...
Yeah, that's...
Yep.
Pushing the button, people can do incorrectly because the
But
boat's rocking,
there's a lot-
they can't see it.
Well, they're a lot more likely to make an error.
So what do we say?
They're also more likely to make an error when they're trying to work out, you know, we're here, but the nearest port is over here, and so what's the tidal depth going to be over the sandbar when we're there? I'm not really sure if I got the right, and there's a lot more area for mistakes doing it, you know, the old way than doing it with.
Not the way I teach people.
I won't say it. Okay, am I running out of time?
You are running out of time.
So there's lots of other benefits, and the drawbacks. Well, the electronic chart you can't scribble on. Sorry, folks, but you can't scribble on an electronic chart. That's a big drawback. The drawbacks with paper charts, you've got a list as long as your arm.
Those drawbacks.
Those are drawbacks. How good you fix when you're tired and seasick, the boat's doing this, and you're trying to get a compass fix. How good is your cocked hat going to be from a compass when you're doing this?
Same as trying to get the button in.
No, well.
Come on in, Peter. You're running out of time.
But the biggest drawback of all is this one.
Don't also put it near your computer.
Yeah, you've lost about a square metre of space on a boat which the size of boats I sail in is important. Okay, so I'm almost done. So anyway, the parallels, we've gone through stone tablets. People, when they put engines in boats, sailors didn't want to get on a boat without a sail. What happens if the engine fails? Into our heads. Morse code for semaphore. You know, why would we give up using flags to get around? So anyway, what I'm saying is the worries are not really realistic. So if we're going to be realistic, you could bin your charts. It's really all right to do it. And that's all I've got to say.
Okay, Peter. Well done. Right now.
Can I just say one quick?
You're fine. Well, before you speak, John, because you've had your say.
Say that.
Anybody want to? Who wants to say something? Please. Dick, let's hear from you, Dick. Yeah, go for it.
Right. Well, I think the speaker has spoke very well and covered pretty well every aspect of the thing that would be of interest and important part of one, which is practical to me. Now, I've been sailing offshore for over 40 years, and in that time I've accumulated a large number of charts, because I didn't start using electronic charts until that line and the whole of the United Kingdom. Now, if I had to buy those charts now, at the cost of our Admiralty charts, it would be around £3,000. Now, in my pocket here, I have another little thing. This is electronic charts. And this has all the charts of Northern Europe on it, including the United Kingdom, from Norway down to Spain. Said the paper charts would cost me £3,000. This cost me £52. It's the price of 3 Admiralty charts, and it has all the charts down to the largest possible scale, including showing which marine berth you're on, for the whole of Europe. There's no competition on cost. And I do use this when I'm navigating now. I do have my paper charts on the table, so I'm on the fence. I do keep my paper charts going. Thank you.
Okay. Dick?
Plug that into something.
Just laptop. You don't have to spend $2,000 racing on chart plotter.
I'm going to get the guys out to the bar. For those of you who want to grab a drink, then we'll grab a drink. John, do you want to say?
Yeah. I've been sailing like 20 odd years and never sailed using chart plotters for the boat's electronic systems. Never. Always use an independent system, which is this one here.
Yeah.
So that's completely independent. So it doesn't matter what happens to the electronics on the boat. That is independent. And I've got a power pack that goes with it.
You have something like that, don't you, Harry? You have something like that.
So you've got 4 days to fix the days on your boat.
An
To get to a
independent.
place of safety.
It's a bit tricky when you're in the middle of the
But I carry a generator on the boat, so I'm going to put
All my crew have got one of those, which has got a similar sort of thing. So
I've
we've
got a
got
little
20
something.
different independent power supplies. And I've never used chart plotters. Never have I used chart plotters. Never used a chart plotter. When you say chart plotter, people normally think of this.
Okay.
If all your wiring.
Excuse me, one person at a time. Thank you, John. You're just speaking there, John. Yeah. Did you? That's it. Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah.
I just got another
Yeah.
strap line.
Okay, Adrienne. Yeah.
From the RYA, and it says, ultimately, safe navigation is all about experience, education, and good judgment.
Yeah.
Ultimately, safe navigation is all about experience, education, and good judgment. That's one of your RYA mates done.
Okay. What do you think then, Peter? Would you be comfortable to dump the paper charts, or would you be thinking? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. It's what you're comfortable with as well, isn't it? I think. A lot. You know, it's time. It takes time to adjust to new systems. And I like the idea of electronic charts, but I think I'd want to be more competent with electronic charts than perhaps I am. And maybe that's just down to the frequency of using electronic charts.
You still plot your compass when you say that?
Sorry?
You still plot your compass when on your paper charts?
I do, because I suppose I find not amusing, but I like to know that I can still do it a bit, you know, and maybe there is an element of I suppose it's not checking the GPS, but it's the fact that having put something on the chart, I can think, yeah, the GPS is correct. But in actual fact, all I'm doing is I'm not very often would I use dead reckoning or anything other than taking the GPS coordinates and putting them on the chart. So I'm not achieving anything because the GPS is running the chart plot in the first place.
So I'm saying, when was the last time you took three bearings and transferred it onto a chart?
Probably when I did my practical skipper course. Yeah.
You see, I'm with both of you. I think electronics are brilliant and all the rest of it, but I also think there's an awful lot of stuff in the world we live in that doesn't really behave according to electronics, and I think some paper stuff and experience and all those things, you need them as well. You need them behind you.
Yeah.
Now, I've got sat nav on my car, and as you know, I drive around quite a bit. I've still got a pile of maps in my boot.
Well, I've just thrown away my atlas in my car. I realised it was 5 years old, and I thought I'd never picked it up since I've had a GPS in the car.
Yes. No, I don't, because it gets wrong
Yeah.
and I argue with it.
And realistically, where will we be in 100 years' time? In 100 years' time, all right, very good. In 100 years' time, people are still going to be on the water, touch wood. People are still going to be sailing. Will there be paper charts in 100 years' time? It's just a matter of time before things do change and move on. It's a bit like HS2. Surely, in 100 years' time, HS2
They'll still not be built.
it will exist. It just won't be in our lifetime. So
There's another thing with
is now the time for paper charts to go in our lifetime?
There's another thing for electronic charts. I have a good friend who was bringing a boat from Croatia back to Turkey. It was a delivery, and they were at night, and they managed to get into Albanian waters. And he was using his navionics, and he hadn't gone down enough, but he went down enough, he got enough detail, and they realised they were in the middle of a minefield. So what he did was he turned around and he was able to follow, because they got there without hitting a mine, so he reckoned, if I follow my trace exactly on the way back, I'll get out without hitting a mine, and that's what he did. Now without an electronic chart, he would have been stuck, because even if you're plotting your position every hour, it's not going to be enough to get you out of that sort of
Peter, in that situation, is he following a line on his electronic equipment?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be affected by tide by the time he went back?
That's the point.
Well, the mines would have been tethered to the seabed, so as long as he was in the right position.
Compared to, because they would be right as well.
The GPS isn't accurate to the nearest foot, is it? So it's still, but it's better than if he'd been plotting on the paper.
That's quite actually.
That's it.
GPS and it's a GLONASS, so it takes whichever, as far as I know, it takes where the geometry is best.
Yeah, so where do you see where you are?
It talks to my iPad.
Oh, it talks to your iPad.
No, not at all. No.
Share my iPad.
Yeah, we want to hear your
Emotions been a chance, yeah. We've been paper charts.
Oh, is this the
My paper charts, yeah.
So, no, hang on, don't worry. If you want to vote now, fine. Alan, you wanted to say something?
I've got a 4 and a game.
Come on, right.
Yeah.
If you call a motion, you're voting for bin.
You're full binning or against binning.
Please, order. Alan Mason.
My first experience ever of chart plotter was I came through Hurst Narrows and I looked at the chart plotter. According to the chart plotter, we're in a car park in a pub. But when a certain member of this club was going tonight, parked us on a rock in Croatia, and we couldn't get off, which is another complicated story. When we finally got the thing moving, we didn't, because I was down, but I didn't know what route he'd taken on. So we did what you just said. We reversed the track and off we went. Yeah, that did work. So I've got mixed feelings on the subject.
Ed, did you want to? Ed, we haven't heard from you, I don't think. What? Yeah. Did you want to say anything else? No.
Well, the big problem I find with chart plotters on charter boats is that they're always in some strange place. Someone mentioned them being behind the wheel. There's all sorts of other places. I saw one last year, I think, and it was down by your ankles. I couldn't understand for that.
Yeah.
And of course, when you go on a charter boat, you have to navigate the boat with what you're provided. And the paper charts are the best option.
I suppose as well, on a boat, you can find. You end up with six. You can end up with 6 navigators because you've got.
I'm going to use once a year.
Yeah.
Like that on a charter boat.
How much is your security deposit?
On the boat.
Was it as much as
It's a lot less.
Did you want to say something?
I like to.
Not if you park the boat on a rock, because you're using your paper charts and you don't know where you are.
He wasn't using any charts.
Peter's screen had one of the pros of electronic charts was it's easy to steer and navigate. A story about steering and navigate was a group of people chartered a boat from Plymouth and went across the Channel Islands. This was October half term, and came back at the end of the half term. There's strong westerly winds, and they decided to come to Plymouth on the east side. So they left the breakwater. Were going to leave the breakwater to their port side. 3 of the crew members were down below with severe seasickness. So the skipper was trying to steer the boat and navigate at the same time. And he hit some rocks. And the rocks were called the Shag Rocks. And he's the only person who lost his life.
Yeah.
So my point, you shouldn't steer and navigate at the same time.
But then.
Are you aware of any cases where boats have been using completely electronic stuff and something's gone wrong? Whereas perhaps if they'd had, I don't know if there are any case studies yet, had paper charts as well, you know, is there any legal issue there? Because according to Solus there is, isn't there? You should have both.
Yeah.
Well, it would be interesting to know the incidents of boats that have got out of trouble because they went from electronic charts to paper charts.
Yes, and I don't know whether there's been a case of, well, we weren't carrying both sets, you know, I don't know. There must be a test case soon.
We have Ross. First time I've met you today, and I think you've been on to a couple of evenings. Is there anything you want to say? What's your thoughts on this for or against? Are you on the fence or are you on the keel?
I'm with him. I would say at the moment I'd rather keep my charts because that's what I'm used to. I haven't sailed very much, so I'm used to charts. I've only had one experience, one time trip with the electronics, and it was interesting. So I think I'd need to know a lot more before I gave up my chart.
I must admit, I've almost found it quite amusing when you're on a boat. I remember being up in Scotland with John, and there's probably a boat of 8 people, and there was about 6 navigators on the boat. So 6 of us all got their phones out and slates out, and we're all sort of like, well, where are we? It's like, whereas, you know, the paper chart.
And you still didn't know where you were.
The paper chart, there's probably only one person prepared to go downstairs and sit in front of the chart table. And as Peter says, using up space for the drinks. I've given out ballot papers. I'll collect them in a moment. But if people want to continue talking for a few minutes, that's fine. There's a lot of glasses out there with plenty of drink in them. So if anybody wants to say any more, Pat, then. Yeah.
Where do you put them?
I shall collect them up. Anything from anybody else, please?
I'll tell
Tony, please. Hush.
When SatNav for the yachtsman first came in January, Earl's Court Boat Show, 1980, then forward, unless a yachtsman was into celestial navigation and did appropriate cruising, the word waypoint, I can tell you for 100% fact, they never come across the word waypoint unless they were flying aircraft. It was a new word in the marine industry, and the number of times I spent weekends on behalf of the company going to the Hamble or somewhere. Your sat-nav's no good. It says the nav towers in the wrong place. It says it's southwest of the Hamble, and then you discover they don't know their lap from their long. So if you put in a crap waypoint, what do you expect? And it happened time and again and again, because it was a new method of navigation for the yachtsmen, most of them.
Sorry, as they do sometimes in TV world, That recording didn't work, so we're going to pretend we're just doing it again, okay? So the recording is now playing. So, thanks very much all for coming along this evening. And let's have the results. So the results of this evening's debate.
We're on the edge of our chair.
So, for the motion, I've been in the charts.
He's counting the big head.
4. Against 14. So for time being, you do keep the charts on the table on your vote. Thanks very much, everybody. I hope you've had a good evening.
Well done, Harry.